What's up, football fans? It is time. It is Thursday, September the 5th, which means Thursday night football in about an hour, not less, 4:05, 5:15 we're kicking off. I mean, I slept last night. I know I saw the memes about, oh, I can't sleep. What am I going to do? I slept great because I was so excited to get up today. It was a long day of work. I'll be honest. Today's day of work was not my favorite because you just kept watching the clock. But super excited that we have real football tonight. We have points going in our lineups. We have drafted dynasty teams. We've drafted redraft. We've had keeper leagues. We've had best ball. And we finally get to see some points go on the board. So could not be happier that it is time for us to go and get real points and watch games and have more content to talk about. It just feels like fall. Kids are back in school, and man, it's what a great time of the year. So hope you all are looking forward to a great game tonight. I know I am. I was actually at the Chiefs-Lions game last year. So that was super exciting, not for the Chiefs fans, but super exciting game to be a part of. Obviously, the banner and the unveiling of the Super Bowl trophy, everything was really, really cool. The pageantry. I went with a couple buddies. One of the buddies was, of course, a big Lions fan, so he had a great day. And I'm super excited for tonight. You know, you couldn't ask for a better matchup. Defending Super Bowl champ Chiefs hosting the AFC, rematch of the AFC Championship game here with the Baltimore Ravens. We should have a ton of points in the game. Obviously, there's a ton of fantasy implications with the players that you've all got on your rosters. So I couldn't be happier. We're going to get this show done on time. And obviously, we will make sure everyone is on time for the game. Couple quick changes. I'm going to do a couple quick announcements, and then we'll dive in. It's 4:00 in the afternoon here, Pacific time. During the season, my show is going to be at 4, and I'm only going to go for about 45 minutes. But the thing I'm going to do, because we're running right up against Thursday Night Football, is I'm probably going to be releasing on, I think, Tuesdays, podcast-only content over on Spotify. So if you're subscribed to my channel, first of all, I appreciate you. I'm always going to continue to do the YouTube live show. But if you are, just looking for more content that I'm going to be creating and putting out, you can always jump over to Spotify and listen there, as well as Patreon. So we still get multiple days a week of the extra point. I'm grateful to be part of the Get Right Fantasy Network. I know I got Rasta in here as my guy. What's up, Rasta? He and I are going to be doing shows together. Got my boy Kendall saying what up. He's a part of the network as well. Really quick, just want to go through the schedule. We have shows every day of the week. There's tons of content for y'all. You're not going to be missing anything. On Mondays, Rasta and Frank at 9 p.m. going to be doing the recap waivers show. On Tuesdays, our boy Tycoon, make sure you give him some love over at the Fantasy Boardroom, going to be doing his video cast at 7 p.m. Pacific. And then on Wednesdays, Rasta and Frank will be back to go through roster management at 9 o'clock Pacific time with some buy, sell, trade targets. Thursdays, obviously, you got me at the extra point, 4 p.m. Pacific prior to Thursday Night Football. My show has been in the offseason heavy Dynasty. As we get closer to the season, it transitions from Dynasty into some more best ball and redraft. And then obviously now that we're in season, I'm actually going to be doing a ton, and we'll start it tonight with some DFS lineups, some content there, some props that I like. So that's going to be kind of the main focus of the live show. And then obviously the content I'll create for the podcast coming out in season is going to be really just hot topics, trades, Q&A, everything that we can possibly think of. So on Fridays with the network, we got two shows. On the East Coast at 6 p.m. at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 Eastern. Mike and Kendall, our boys from Get Right Fantasy Network and the Fantasy Football Tavern, going to be holding it down with the sit start of the week, part 1. And then the second show is going to be myself and Rasta, and that's going to be at 8 p.m. Pacific, 11 Eastern with sit start part 2. If you can't make that live show East Coast because it's too late for you, no stress. Obviously, everything's recorded and on the channel. So jump into any of our channels or Get Right Fantasy Network. Make sure you're hitting that subscribe button and the bell to notifications when we go live. But it is on Friday, so you can listen on Saturday at your convenience for all those sit-start decisions and get our takes on how you should be managing your roster for the week. And then lastly, on Sundays, our boy Mike Classic Mike at 8 a.m. Pacific, 11 a.m. Eastern is going to be going through really quickly that active, inactive, live Q&A, last minute sit start advice leading you right up to kickoff. So great content on the channel. Again, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. We are here for you 6 days a week. I'm sure if we can put something in on a Saturday, we will. Obviously, Underdog Fantasy, you guys know it, but for those that don't, it is the best and easiest place to play fantasy sports. From their best ball draft tournaments, which means you draft your team with no season-long commitments, no waivers, no trades, no weekly lineup settings, to their pick'em contests where you can pick higher or lower players on player stats like total yards and touchdowns. Guys, use the promo code GETRIGHT, GETRIGHT, and receive a 50% deposit match. Instead of the $250 bonus cash they used to get, now you can receive up to $1,000 in bonus cash. Any deposit exceeding $2,000 will be capped at $1,000, but a match for your initial deposit. When I started with Underdog, it was $100. So it's come a long way. Visit underdogfantasy.com or download the fastest growing fantasy app from your app store now. So since we know we got a partnership with Underdog and you've got your phones out, let's jump in and talk about a couple of props for tonight's game, Thursday Night Football, and a special Friday night game live from Brazil. And we're going to go through a couple of takes that I like, both player takes, but also some of the things that I see here from lines that I think are solid lines, and you should, if please bet responsibly. But I think these are some really good lines and some things that I think you should be taking advantage of if you are an Underdog player here. Travis Kelce, it's week 1. Travis Kelce is obviously the free square because they're giving away a promo. So if he gets a half of a yard, anything over a half a yard, he will win. Please take that. That's just a free square on your parlay. But here's 5 lines that I like tonight that I'm actually excited about. Derrick Henry right now has an over-under of a half a rushing touchdown. I'm going to take the over. I love Mark Andrews. I think Mark Andrews is and can be the overall tight end 1 in fantasy this season. We love Lamar Jackson. But the Ravens didn't really bring anyone else in to complement Zay Flowers, right? So, OBJ's gone. Rashad Bateman's been hurt most of the offseason. I'm not sure what he's, I think, active tonight. I have to go back and look. But I just feel like tonight's game, regardless of if it's, an over-under, high scoring game, we expect there to be points. The total implications on the game, give me just a second here, 47.5 on the over-under, 25.5 team implied total for the Chiefs, 22.5 for the Ravens. I think one of those touchdowns goes through Derrick Henry on the ground tonight. That's how I view it. So I'm taking the over on that Derrick Henry rushing touchdown line there. I think it's a great start for the season for Derrick Henry, who we certainly expect could easily get to double-digit touchdowns. That's where I know myself and the guys that get right. That's where we see his real value this season because we expect his workload to not be what it was in Tennessee, but his touchdown upside is absolutely there. So definitely taking that. I want to switch sides of the ball here. Look, all offseason, all we heard about was Rashee Rice is getting suspended. Rashee Rice is going to miss time. Rashee Rice may not even play this season. And now it's Thursday, September 5th. It's game day. There's no Rashee Rice suspension. He came off an incredible rookie season. Had he not been suspended, he's probably going in the top 3 rounds of your draft. I just took him in the 3rd round of a draft with all industry guys that I knew he would never get back to me. And not one person had a problem with how high I drafted him. His line tonight is 61.5. I'm going to take the over. I think Mahomes is going to throw it. I'm not ready to unveil Xavier Worthy. Look, Xavier Worthy's value is the deep catches. I think he can catch big ones. He could easily catch a 70-yard touchdown. But I think for tonight, given that it's a home game and they lost the home game last year, I know they won the Super Bowl, but it isn't important, to start on your home field with a win. The fact that Worthy is playing in his very first NFL game, Rashee Rice is, other than Kelce, is the target guy there for Mahomes. I like the over tonight for Rice on 61.5. Patrick Queen is no longer there, so I do think there's some space in the middle of that defense. I do like the Ravens defense, but it's week 1. We don't really know what it's going to be yet. So I think Rice hits that line, 61.5. I'm going to take the over. Let's stay with the Chiefs here. Patrick Mahomes, 1.5 passing touchdowns. I'm going to take the over. I know I've got a sit-start decision myself this week. Do I start James Cook? Do I start Isaiah Pacheco? I know I've been going back and forth with some of the boys in the group chat on that all day. I see a path for Pacheco to score a touchdown on the ground tonight. I also see a path where he catches a touchdown out of the air. I don't know what Samaje Perine's readiness level is going to be with the install on a new team, new offense coming over. Basically, I don't even know if he's been in Kansas City for a full week yet. So while I think he might have some relevance going forward, I'm just not sure what his relevance is going to be tonight. So I like Mahomes with the 2 passing touchdowns. We know Worthy could catch a long one. We know I just mentioned I took the over on the receiving yards for Rashee Rice. So if it's 62 yards plus the touchdown, obviously Kelsey's a red zone threat. With an implied team total of, sorry, I lost my spot. With an implied team total of 25.5, you're looking at 3 touchdowns and a field goal. I think at least 2 of those go through the air via Mahomes. So give me the over on Patrick Mahomes for 1.5 passing touchdowns tonight. If there's any other lines that you guys like or questions you have, I know there's some stuff here in the chat. I'm going to pause here before I get to our Friday game. I know we've got looks like top MF and top MF in here. Nice. It took me a second. He's got over on Kelsey for 0.5 yards. Yep. Over on Henry for the touchdown and over on Flowers receiving. So nice. So he's taken a little bit of maybe a bring back there with Zay Flowers. Appreciate you dropping in some of your lines there, bud, and showing us, what you're thinking as well. Let's go to Friday's game. Let's talk a little bit about the Eagles. I love the Packers. I just didn't see any lines that really stood out to me on the Packers side of the ball. There's some lines that they're going to hit. That's just how it happens. But there was 2 lines for the Eagles that just really stood out that I couldn't pass up. Again, this is the underdog over and unders, kind of some of the higher or lowers here. But Saquon Barkley is listed as an anytime touchdown scorer. Give me the over. That's too easy for me. I don't see a path where Saquon Barkley doesn't find the end zone this week. It's opening week. I think at the end of the day, we have a little bit of nervousness about what the tush push is going to look like without Jason Kelsey. I think it's a very small amount of nervousness. I think they're still going to run that play. That play is going to be extremely effective. I just feel like it's an advantage for the Eagles that other teams can't defend the tush push and the ability for a Saquon Barkley to be there inside of the 2-yard line. It's two different options for the Eagles to score a rushing touchdown. Even with Jason Kelsey's retirement, the Eagles are still one of the top offensive lines in the game. So give me Saquon Barkley as an anytime touchdown scorer. I will take the over on that. And then the line that I really like is actually Devonta Smith. And this is, keep in mind, a full PPR site, 11.15 fantasy points. Only 6 times in the season last year did he miss this mark, and 2 of those times he scored 9 and 10 points, so he didn't miss it by much. I'm very high on the Eagles passing offense with Kellen Moore this year. The addition of Saquon Barkley, I think, really helps A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith. We love Jalen Hurts as a potential overall QB1. This is one of the best games as far as implied point totals on the entire slate. The Brazil thing makes me a little nervous. It's humid down there. It's a different environment for these guys, but it's a 49.5 point over under with an implied team total of 26 for the Eagles and 23.5 for the Packers. So I just don't, Barkley, obviously I just told you, I think he's the anytime scorer, but I just don't see Jahan Dotson featuring in this offense this week. And I don't know what his role is going to be in this season yet. I think we'll find out hopefully over the next 2 or 3 weeks what that answer to that question is. And Dallas Goedert's coming off the oblique injury. So to me, it's Devonta Smith and it's A.J. Brown in the pass as the two true pass catching options. So I feel very confident and very comfortable taking Devonta Smith for the over on 11.15 fantasy points. And I mentioned, again, he only missed that mark 6 times of the 17 games that he played. He played a full season last year. So thanks to Underdog for being an awesome sponsor. Obviously, really great having them as a relationship. And I want to switch gears over to a little bit of DFS. I know everybody is, for those that don't know, DFS, Daily Fantasy Sports. You basically can go in on a couple of different sites and you get a budget generally of about $50,000. It's imaginary budget. Don't get excited. They're not giving you 50K. But you'll go in and you'll set your lineup based off of the pricings that are available for the quarterback, 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, a tight end, and then a flex and a defense. I want to go through each of the positions and give you all just kind of my player pool, who I think are players that I am targeting. What I'm going to actually do is at the end of each and every week, obviously I'm going to play my own DFS lineup. And then on the next Thursday show, I will reveal to you what my lineup was. I will let you know if I cashed or if I did not. And then obviously we'll go through the entire season with a little DFS segment. I've been playing DFS for a couple years. It's a lot of fun. I play Dynasty. I play best ball. Obviously, I'm in some redraft leagues, but DFS is really fun because you can just a player you don't have any exposure to in your Dynasty league, or maybe you didn't have a chance to draft in your redraft league. You can have exposure on that particular week, especially if they're in a good matchup at a good price point. And it just adds a new element of fun, to your Sundays. When I go through this, I'm only going to go through the main slate. Again, for those that are a little newer, they don't know what the main slate means. The main slate is only the games that are being played on Sundays in the morning and in the afternoons. So no Sunday night football, no Monday night football, no Thursday, and then obviously this week, no Friday. So those players are not included on the main slate. So if you go in and you want to play all of the players, you would have to play the full slate. So don't be upset if I don't mention a player there. But what about Patrick Mahomes? You said he's going to have a great night. He's not on the main slate this week because he's playing Thursday night football. So at the quarterback position, I'm really excited this week because there's 4 players that stand out to me. And I always play in cash. And so for those that don't know what cash is basically you're going to go in these large field tournaments. You're playing against thousands of people. And every person has a crazy lineup and a chance to win. In cash, what you're really looking for is the ceiling performances. And I like to play in double ups. And what a double up means is I only have to be in the top half of my league and I double my investment. So if I play in the $5, league, I put $5 in as long as my team is in the top half of the 2,500 or however many players are in that specific tournament, then I cash and double my money. So I love playing in that. I will go through later in the season, kind of some of those large field tournaments, ways to get different strategies that you can take. But cash to me seems to be the best way for new players, A, to have some early success, B, to not have to invest a ton of money, especially if you're newer to DFS. And then lastly, you only have to be better than half in these double ups. You only have to be better than half of the other players in the tournament versus having to hit, basically a perfect week lineup, right? In the cash tournament, in the GPPs and the large player tournaments, because you have to have the absolute ceiling to cash out at those, $10,000 to first place type of a lineup. So I want to just stop here real quick, Rasta, say what I'm love doing is putting as many of my opponent's players in my DFS. So if they go off, I'm not as mad because I make money. I love that strategy, Rasta. I'm not going to lie. I've done that a little bit. So what he's saying is if he's not, if he's playing against Patrick Mahomes, maybe he puts Patrick Mahomes in his DFS lineup. So if he has a great week, he's not upset he lost his, redraft league because he's making money in DFS. So fantastic. So let's jump in on my cash pool again, looking at double ups. I want to start with Josh Allen at the top. Look, he's the most expensive player on the slate, but I love that game. Look, the Bills have a 27.5 implied team total. It's a 48.5 over under with Kyler Murray and the Cardinals coming to town here in week 1. Josh Allen can win you a week. The ceiling is there. He can finish as the overall QB1 on the week in a game environment we like at home. And as much as we love, Keon Coleman and we expect Dalton Kincaid and James Cook to have a massive season here, Keon Coleman's still a rookie. Curtis Samuel is injured. I don't know what his involvement will be. We'll see. Khalil Shakir is good, not great. Josh Allen's still the goal line back. So when you're looking at, the volume of touches, where's it going to go? To me, it's going to go to Josh Allen. So Josh Allen coming in at $8K. It is expensive, so you'd have to get some salary savings at some of the other positions, which is why I'm going to give you kind of my pool. But in that same game, for a cheaper option, I love Kyler Murray this week. I love Kyler Murray this season. But I love Kyler Murray this week because we expect the Cardinals to be chasing that game. The Cardinals defense isn't great. It's not a defense that you're particularly excited about. So we expect Josh Allen and the Bills maybe not to roll, but to certainly score. And obviously we at home, we'd expect them to be winning that game. I just picked the Bills in one of my buddies, pick 'em pools for the week as a team that I think will win. I love Kyler Murray at 6,400. I think they're going to have to chase the game. That's what you want. And I think he has a chance with the rushing upside, maybe not to be a slate breaker, maybe not to be the overall QB1, but at 6,400 to pay off his salary. I certainly expect him to do that this week. If you're looking for two other names, I would take a look at Anthony Richardson, $6,300 this week. That game environment is another one that we really like. I believe, if my memory is right, it is in Indianapolis, but it is a game against the Texans. 25.5 team implied total for the Texans, 23 for the Colts, 48.5 over under. So for $100, you may need that savings to go somewhere else. Yes, it is a small sample size, what we saw last year, but Anthony Richardson, and the reason we've drafted him as the QB 5 to 8, depending on your league, is because we know that the rushing upside is there with the touchdowns. He can be a slate breaker. He can win you a week. We have seen him do things that Josh Allen has done, even in that small sample size. I think he has to be in consideration this week because we love CJ Stroud and the Houston offense. We have to believe that game's going to be competitive. So give me Anthony Richardson at 6,300. And if you really want to pay down, and I don't know that I would recommend this, but if you want to pay down, I like Jaden Daniels at $5,700 for the similar reasons I like all these other guys. The rushing upside's there. Yes, it's its first game. Yes, he's a rookie, but they're playing Tampa Bay, who we expect to be we expect the Commanders to be losing the majority of their games this season. I don't project them to be a very good team. But in DFS and in fantasy, that's what we want. We want you to be losing games. We want you to have a good offense that can score points with a big rushing quarterback and a terrible defense. That's what we're asking for. So I would personally, and I'll be honest, I mentioned I'll reveal my team obviously next week and what I'm going to do. I haven't totally decided. This is why I'm giving you my player pool. I'm going to probably look at Jaden Daniels, but I'd feel more comfortable with Richardson or Murray. But if I really find some great value at the wide receiver and running back position that I pay up for, I could consider Jaden Daniels at 5,700. At running back, I'm looking at 5 guys this week. And for week 1, I'm looking at volume plays. I want guys that I know have guaranteed touches and touchdown upside. So I'm going to start with Rachaad White at 6,300. Look, he was the bell cow last year. I know that Dave Canales has moved on, but I don't project Washington to be very good. I think there's going to be opportunities for him to catch passes. It's a full PPR site. Even though we like Bucky Irving, it's still Rachaad White's backfield. He should have guaranteed volume at 6,300. I think you're going to get a ton of 20 to 25 touches in that game. And if he pays you off with a touchdown and 60 to 100 yards, you're in a great spot with that salary. I don't love this game environment for this next player, but I love the player. And that's what I'm looking for is, again, guaranteed volume. And it's KW3. It's Kenneth Walker III. I don't love the game environment because it's the Broncos. The game is in Seattle, which I like being at home. But Zach Charbonnet has not been fully practicing. He just came back to practice this last week, and it was not in any sort of a form of contact. In fact, I think he was actually the first 2 days back at practice. He wasn't even involved. I think Kenneth Walker is obviously the starter. I'm less worried about Charbonnet taking over this week. I know he's going to have relevance later in the year. But in week 1, at home against Bo Nix in Denver, give me Kenneth Walker III at $6,100 in my player pool. And then 3 other guys that stand out. James Conner at 6,200. Trey Benson's there, sure. But again, we talked a little earlier about the Bills and the Cardinals game. If there's a rushing touchdown, it probably goes through Conner. I don't think Benson's getting the goal line work in week 1. So I think Conner's probably a little bit more touchdown dependent. So on a site, like DraftKings, maybe FanDuel is a better play for him, but he's still in that pool because we like the game environment. And again, we expect the Cardinals to be chasing the game. So if Conner gets the first quarter touchdown and then they've got to chase and pass the rest of the way, that should be good things for James Conner as well. I've got 2 other players I want to just kind of talk through. It's the same game environment. And again, I don't love the game environment with Seattle and Denver, but I'm not ready to just go ham on Bo Nix, especially in week 1 on the road in Seattle, which is such a difficult stadium to play in. I don't know how much they're going to let him throw it. And I just don't love their wide receivers. Cortland Sutton really, to me, is like the only good pass catching option. So I view Javonte Williams as a good volume play in week 1. I know we're excited about Jaleel McLaughlin this season. But again, because I just don't project Bo Nix to be, a great play this week, and I don't know what their pass catching options look like, that makes Javonte interesting to me. He's at 5,500, so keep him in your player pool. And then the last player I would mention is Chuba Hubbard. We're excited about Jonathan Brooks in the dynasty community where, I got Jonathan Brooks last night in the 14th of 15 rounds because just nobody wanted him because he's on the pup. I threw him on IR, and if he's back later in week 5 plus, awesome for me. If he's not, he'll sit there for me for a while. My point in saying that is Chuba has no competition. I don't see Miles Sanders as competition. I don't know how much Miles Sanders is really even going to play. I'm not a big Bryce Young believer. It's a division game, for the Panthers against New Orleans. I think Chuba's got an opportunity to just get all the volume that he can get. So I don't love the game environment, but I like the opportunity there for Chuba. And if I'm paying up for a higher value quarterback and some of the receivers I'm going to talk about next, I may need the salary savings. So I'm okay with Chuba there at 5,300. At the wide receiver position, it is it's 3 guys that I really like, and then a big dart throw, and then 2 game environments that I think you need to consider. I think you pay up for Tyreek Hill this week. If you're paying down at running back, if you're paying a little bit less for Kyler Murray and Anthony Richardson, I think you have to start Tyreek Hill. It is one of the better game implied totals on the slate. 22.5 for the Jaguars and 26 total points for the Dolphins with a 48.5 over under. Tyreek Hill, I expect to pick up right where he left off last season. We're excited about Mostert. We're excited about Achane. But Jalen Waddle, yes, he's off the injury report and he's going to be there, but I just question how healthy is he? Is he 100% healthy in week 1 here? Because he's been dealing with this kind of lingering, injury here in the non-contact jersey. I know Tyreek's got the thumb, but it's Tyreek Hill. He can break the slate. He can finish as the wide receiver 1. Tua can throw a 5-yard pass and Tyreek can run the other 65, right? And there's your touchdown. So give me Tyreek Hill at $8,700. I mentioned at the top of the show, I've been playing DFS for a long time. I'd have to go back and look at my own notes. I just don't remember Tyreek being this cheap. He's usually in that 9 to 93, 9,500 range, especially if after the weeks when he does, go off. I don't know if this is the cheapest you'll ever get in this season, but it probably is pretty darn close. So Tyreek Hill is probably going to be a lock in my cash lineups for me this week at the wide receiver position. Another player I'm really excited about, and I'm excited about him regardless of what happens with his counterpart. It's T. Higgins. I think Jamar Chase is playing. I think Jamar Chase, I know he's been practicing. In what capacity, we'll see. I think he plays this weekend, but he hasn't been at practice in pads. He hasn't gotten a ton of he hasn't got any game reps yet. I think for me, I'm a former college athlete, so I speak to this, like, your game preparation, your game fitness is so much different than your practice fitness. So even though Jamar Chase can do things that only a handful of guys in the league can do, I love T. Higgins this week. I love that. I mean, they're playing New England, who we don't project to be very good. The challenge in the game is the game might get away, so they may stop throwing it. But I do think that the volume, even if Chase plays, I think the volume is going to be there for T. Higgins. And at 6,100, to me, that's just that might be too good of a price to pass up. So I like that Higgins Burrow connection this week, even though I don't have Burrow in my cash pool. This next one's thin, and so it's someone you need to consider. But I just think, again, I'm looking for volume and guaranteed volume in week 1. It's Malik Neighbors. And I've been very historically down on Daniel Jones. I think most people have. I know that's what makes this thin, but when we've been talking about it all off season, there's nobody in New York. There's just no one there. I mean, we're talking about, do you start, Theo Johnson as a super late dart throw, if you've completely punted the position. People like Devin, Motor Singletary. I just don't know who's going to catch passes except for Neighbors. So even though I don't really rate Daniel Jones at 6,000, Malik Neighbors is probably in my cash pool this week. In my lineup this week. He's obviously in my pool. And I think it'd probably be a challenge for me to move off of him. I think he looks like one of the stronger plays this week. It's hard because, like I said, we just don't project the game. They're at a 20 total, team implied total. The Vikings are at 41.5. Excuse me, the game is 41.5 against the Vikings. I said that to make it seem like they were 20-point favorites. That would have been crazy. But I do think they're going to be chasing the game. I think the Vikings are going to win that game. And I think that helps Neighbors, and the talent that we've seen from him. He can do things I think other players can't. So 6,000 for Malik Neighbors in your cash pool. Next up is Andre Yashovas. Look, if Jamar Chase doesn't play, he's the free square. He's someone you have to pay attention to the entire week. He's $3,000. I think you can play him if you just want to take the free square, even if Chase does play. It gets really thin, obviously, but at 3K, you need 60, you know what I mean? Like, you need 60 yards. You need a touchdown. You need something. You get one catch for 12 yards and it's a touchdown, and you've doubled your salary there. If you're paying up at other positions and you really want to pay up at some of the tight ends that we're going to talk about who are in good game environments, I think you can play him even if Chase plays. It's just pay attention to the news, and just keep in mind if Chase doesn't play, a lot of players are going to play him. So a lot of folks will kind of neutralize that out. So you might want to get a little different with some of these other players in the cash game. And that's why I want to give you this next group of kind of 4 receivers to consider if you do end up playing Yashovas, regardless of Chase's availability. I like both of the Buccaneers wide receivers this week. It's the Commanders, who we don't anticipate being very good. Chris Godwin is most likely lining up against a rookie across the field, and I forget his name off the top of my head. I did my show sheet just a little too late today, so I apologize for not having that information for you. But I love Chris Godwin moving back into the slot. He's 5,800 compared to Mike Evans 7,300. So if you don't play Rashad White and you go a different route, I would probably play Chris Godwin. It's a game environment. We expect the Bucs to have some joy throwing the ball. Godwin in the slot against a rookie. I like that. I'll take that for 5,800. And then if you don't feel as confident with Godwin, I know there's some folks that he did burn, folks last season in redraft. Mike Evans at 7,300, obviously going to be Baker's guy. He certainly projects the best of any receiver to catch a touchdown. But just, again, that difference in salary savings is why I probably favor Godwin, so I can pay up for Tyreek and then pay up maybe at some other positions as well. And then I want to talk about, if you play Tyreek, I don't think you have to have a bring back in cash like you do in your large field tournaments where you need the game stack or the correlation. But the pricing is just so good for the Jaguars receivers this week. If you play Tyreek, I think you can fit BTJ or Kirk into your lineup. I don't know if you want to play BTJ, Brian Thomas Jr., because he's a rookie, but he's only 4,700. But Christian Kirk is 5,500. So to me, I probably lean Kirk for obvious reasons. But I actually think you could play either one for the salary savings as a bring back. I've been a little bit down on the Jaguars in preseason. I'm just not a huge fan of the fact that they've replaced Calvin Ridley with Gabe Davis, but that actually means that I like Brian Thomas Jr. and Christian Kirk a lot more. So in a game that we expect has a good game, good implied total, it should be competitive. We expect the Dolphins to be winning and the Jaguars having to chase it. I think that's why you should consider Brian Thomas Jr. and Christian Kirk if you play Tyreek as a bring back. And then obviously if you're game stacking that in a GPP, guaranteed prize pool, a large field tournament, it'll be very popular. So maybe just find a way to get different. I would probably actually take the shot on BTJ because I think people that played Tyreek will have the bring back with Christian Kirk. Let's finish up at the tight end position here. Look, at tight end, it's really, really hard. There's 2 guys that stand out for me as like great game environments, great usage, but they're expensive. And I think it's hard for me to justify paying up for a tight end unless nothing's guaranteed, but unless he's going to project to absolutely be in the conversation for the overall tight end 1. Everyone loves Trey McBride. I love Trey McBride. I think Trey McBride in this first game should have a great day. It is still Marvin Harrison's first game ever. We know what he's capable of. Sure, he could be a generational talent. Yes, we know the last name and the potential for a gold jacket Hall of Fame career. It's day 1 for this kid. Even though we love him, let's let him catch a pass before we anoint him and give him a bust in Canton. Trey McBride, 6,100. Look, if you want to fit in, a cheaper quarterback and find some really good value at wide receiver and running back because you're convinced this is McBride's week to catch a touchdown in a game that they're probably chasing, I wouldn't do it myself, but I think because of the way that he projects, you have to consider it. And then it's Jake Ferguson is the other one. I I just don't see a path for Jake Ferguson to not be the second pass catching option in Dallas. The running back room is a complete mess. Myles Garrett can be a game wrecker. The game's in Cleveland. CD Lamb is the alpha, but then who? And so I think Ferguson has a real chance to score a touchdown in this game. If the Cowboys are going to throw for multiple touchdowns, you'd expect them to go to CD, but I certainly think Ferguson has a chance to score. I have no idea who the running backs are going to be. So to me, Ferguson's a great play, but he's 5,200, so it's expensive. I don't know that I'd pay up for it, but again, if you have a conviction because of the volume and the opportunity, I think I understand. It's a good process to have. Lastly, there's two players that I'm probably going to be considering, and one of these two I think is going to be in my lineup, and it's both of the Washington tight ends. Again, it's not sexy. We know that Washington's probably going to lose that game. But Zach Ertz at 3,600, who is as of right now the starter, and Ben Sinnott at 3K. There's just nobody that you can really pay down for below that price that's going to return any sort of value. And I struggle a lot when I do DFS lineups to pay up for tight ends. I get this question a lot, like, well, when you build your lineup, how do you start? I always start with the cheapest defense that I can possibly find, and who's going to be my punt play tight end, unless the game is just, someone has just an incredible matchup that I feel is worth, paying up for, or it's a price that is just too low. I'm always taking the punt option at tight end because they're just not going to pay it off. I would probably lean Ertz over Sinnott. I like Sinnott. It certainly could be that the Commanders come out in 12 personnel, so I think both could have a run. Sennett's still a rookie. It's Cliff Kingsbury. He had Zach Ertz in Arizona. I certainly think that is an opportunity for him to, have some familiarity for a brand new rookie quarterback in his very first NFL game. At 3,600, you don't need him to do much. And I don't know how comfortable I feel with Ben Sinnott yet until I see it, as much as I like the player and I project him to be a great player. And, in a dynasty league, obviously in redraft, you probably took him as your, tight end too, if you took a second tight end. But what if he gooses you? So I would probably play Ertz here at 3,600. And then my last play is it's ugly, it's gross, but I don't love the game environment. So I actually like the defense. It's the Panthers against the Saints. It's not a great game environment. It's a low point total for both teams. So to me, you're paying down for basically the second cheapest team that you can get. And for me, obviously, the Panthers have a 19. The game environment is 41.5 over under. 19 team implied total for the Panthers. And for I lost my spot. You guys can do the math. So 22.5 for the Saints, right? So it's, again, not a sexy game environment from a defense. That's what I'm looking for. The one thing I do like about the Panthers defense this week, quite simply, is Ryan Ramczyk is out for the season. That is the best offensive tackle for the Saints. So if there's an opportunity for the Saints to give up some sacks and the Panthers, maybe to Derek Carr's not the greatest quarterback, maybe to grab an interception, a couple sacks, and the game environment hits the under, and I do think that game hits the under. I think the Panthers are easily going to pay off their price, and I think you're going to actually be pretty pleased with the fact that you grabbed a gross, disgusting, cheap defense, but you're paying up at the other positions. So that is my DFS take for this week. Again, I will reveal my team next week. I'll obviously set my lineup on Sunday morning, and I will let you know. We'll do a quick review on the next show of how I did, and I'd love to hear how you guys do. So I'm on Sleeper at P Ruskin. You guys know where to find me. Send me a DM. Obviously, like and subscribe to the channel. Jump into the Get Right Fantasy Network, like and subscribe there. Jumping in the chat here. Don't see a ton. If you've got any live Q&A, I'd love to do some of that with you guys for a couple minutes. Otherwise, we're going to wrap this show and we're going to go watch a football game, a real football game. No preseason, no hard knocks, real football. I just got a text that said it's raining in Kansas City. So really happy I'm taking that Derrick Henry over for that touchdown. And I think it's going to be a heck of a fun night. And we get a bonus game tomorrow night. So thanks for tuning in to another episode of The Extra Point. Again, you can find me on Spotify and Patreon. And then, of course, make sure you jump in and hit that like and subscribe button for the Extra Point and the Get Right Fantasy Network. Help us continue to grow and build the brand. If you have any questions, things you want me to answer, you know how to reach out. I'm more than happy. I'll take all the time I possibly can to get you guys all the information that you need to be ready. And then I mentioned at the top of the show, we will come live to you every Friday for 2 different parts with those sit-start decisions so you can get yourself ready with your redraft lineups every single week. Last question, Rasta, have you decided on Pacheco or Cook? Well, it's raining in Kansas City now, and I just don't like Arizona's defense, so I think I'm leaning. My lean is Cook. My lean is Cook this week, Rasta. We'll see. I hope I'm right. The rest of the team's pretty good, so maybe it won't make a difference. But my early lean has been Cook, so we'll see. All right, guys, enjoy Thursday Night Football. Thanks for supporting the show. Have an awesome weekend. Enjoy week 1, and I'll be looking forward to seeing you guys on Friday night with my boy Rasta as we go through the second half of the sit-start decisions for the main slate. Talk to y'all soon. See ya.